At this point, I feel like I finally graduated and got my degree from the school of ChatGPT. We did it, baby. We did it. It took me all of 2 minutes and 39 seconds to finish everything. And I did it. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Thank you, ChatGPT. Let's go. I just realized something recently, that it's a beautiful thing that we have our own personal genius at our disposal at any time in our phone to help us with whatever we need, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Muse Spark by Meta. You know, it's a beautiful thing that we have these tools, but that doesn't necessarily make us a genius by just using the tool, I think. Let me explain. So I actually caught myself doing something the other day with ChatGPT. So, little backstory, I got into a car accident back in September of 2025. Threw my whole body off. I mean, I was a mess. Ended up taking me out of the gym, took me away from jiu-jitsu. I was depressed, I was upset, and I ended up having to get an MRI. So I took those MRI results, took screenshots of those, and put them into ChatGPT. And I'm like, ChatGPT, help me based on my injuries get back in the gym so I can continue doing what I love. And in between that time, I hadn't seen my personal chiropractor. It had been about a month or so. So ChatGPT was nice enough to give me a full workout plan. It gave me about, I would say, 6 to 8 exercises that I could do that would strengthen my core, strengthen my muscles around the injury so I can get back to doing what I love. I actually had a chiropractor appointment after I started doing those exercises. At this point, I was already back in the gym and I felt good. And, you know, I was just going to the chiropractor for an adjustment and just to, you know, keep the oil fresh in this old car. So I was excited, and I actually told Dr. Page, I love you, man. I actually told my chiropractor about what ChatGPT got me doing. And I could tell like it wasn't taken too well. Like, he was nice about it, but I could tell like he was like, oh my God, here we go, right? So I had told him that, hey, you know, I'm back in the gym, I'm back wrestling, I feel great. I actually took my MRI results, I put them in the ChatGPT, it gave me this full workout, and bam, here we are, right? And he was like, well, actually be careful with that because ChatGPT doesn't know your history. It doesn't know, everyone heals different, everyone's body's different. So some of those exercises may or may not be good for your injury. And it turns out he was right. So before I had seen him, a few of those exercises really hurt really bad. I had to X those out. But if I would have ran that by him first, a true professional at his craft, then I probably would not have ran into that problem, and I could have re-injured myself in the process. I could tell that he was bothered by the way I delivered that to him. Someone that spent blood, sweat, and tears learning their craft, and I'm over here excited, not even thinking about it, telling him, you know, what ChatGPT told me in 2 seconds that could be wrong information. After that visit, he was nice about it, and you know, he sent me on my way. I'm still continuing to do the exercises that do work for me, but you know, I take that into consideration now when talking to these professionals, that be mindful about how we deliver what we're learning with these tools. And this actually made me think back, like back in the day with Google, with a funny story with my wife where I love to tell doctors what she Googled and just trying to seem like she knew what she was talking about. And it was funny to me, it was kind of funny to us, but I could tell it wasn't funny to the doctors and they didn't appreciate it. And I used to tell her, like, girls, stop telling these doctors what you Googled. They don't care. They don't care, right? That's what they went to school for. Blood, sweat, and tears. They're not trying to hear what you Googled in 2 seconds. At least with Google, you had to dig a little bit and you actually had to do the research to get the information. But with ChatGPT, it's just Google on steroids, right? Like, no more of that. Bam, all the sources are right there. Everything's right there. So after that interaction happened with my chiropractor, I started to notice it like even more. Just last week, after jiu-jitsu class, a good friend of mine who's been dealing with some injuries and trying to get back to his old self, he asked one of the doctors that actually trains with us for some advice. I believe he was an ER doctor at once. Now he's a surgeon. He's basically highly credentialed in his craft. So my friend was asking the doctor, like, hey doc, I'm having some really bad hip issues right now. He was like, I was on a crutch yesterday and I'm having problems, with this, I'm having problems with that. And the doctor was nice enough to start trying to help my friend with the injuries that he's trying to overcome. But at the same time, my friend was too busy telling him what he learned on ChatGPT. The doctor was like, well, how are you doing with your electrolytes? And how are you doing with your stretches? How are you doing with your water? And my friend was like, oh, I've never had hip problems before. I stretched before. He was like, I'm careful with my movements. So it's not that. ChatGPT told me this, and I'm never over explosive with my hips. But the doctor was like, yeah, but you're doing jujitsu. And you're doing jujitsu sometimes twice a day. So you can't say that you don't use your hips, because jujitsu is all about hip mobility. Right? But my friend kept going. He was like, yeah, but no, that's not it. I changed my diet. I make sure I get some electrolytes in. And I'm doing this, I'm doing that. ChatGPT told me about mushrooms of all things. And the doctor was like, mushrooms? But anyways, to make a long story short, the doctor, just stepped back. He handled it great. And he just said, all right, I guess you have it figured out then. Right? So after that interaction, I went to my friend and I told him, like, hey man, you had an opportunity to ask a friend, a training partner. You basically had a free consultation with a very experienced doctor to try to get help, but you weren't listening. You were too busy telling him what you've learned on ChatGPT. And, you ended up coming out of that conversation with nothing. I think that's just something that we should be mindful of when we're talking to professionals. And I think it's something that we should respect as far as the time and the dedication that people have put into their craft to be where they are and to be a professional in that field. It's great that we have these tools, but at the same time, like, let's be more mindful of who we're speaking to and just not try to seem intelligent because we were able to ChatGPT the information and get it in 2 seconds. And just because we got the information in 2 seconds doesn't necessarily mean we understand the information inside and out. And yeah, and I think that's it. I just wanted to run that by you. It's a problem that I ran into, and I'm sure it drives these professionals crazy. Lawyers, doctors, physical trainers, physical therapists, psychologists, right? They're trying to do their job, but yet you have a pushback from someone who doesn't have an education in that field, but you're getting pushback from them because they were able to learn something on ChatGPT in all of 3 seconds. So anyways, that's it for this one, man. And I hope this message finds you well. Hope you're doing well. And I'll see you next time. Peace.